The banned and restricted announcement has everyone in a fury. Limited players, modern players, and Magic players alike. But there is one format that seems to be actually in a relatively good place, and that's Pauper. And as someone who's relatively invested in the format, wants to see it do well, I want to look at a video by Gavin Verhey that he recently released with some collective knowledge from the Pauper panel, talking about the state of the format, the metagame health, and just some potential unbans, which are spicy. Now, I will preface this by saying that yes, this is going to end up being some pretty low budget React content, but if you want to see more stuff like this, I want to throw it out there because I think it's important to put the word out there about videos like this and put some context behind it from players in the format versus the great overlords of decisions, although it is made by players as well.
Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and also from the Pauper format panel. We're the group monitoring the format and advising Wizards.
Can I just say, just right off the bat, like the Pauper format panel, this is the whole reason why Pauper is arguably the best format in Magic. People will say EDH and other stuff as well, but one of the best constructed format. Legacy Light, the interactions are powerful, and it's managed by people that actually play the format. You can't say this about any other constructed format. The ban cycles are managed by stats and overlords, whereas the Pauper panel and how it really manages itself is, again, managed by the players. It's by people that actively play it, play different strategies, talk about it, think about it day in and day out. The format is amazing, and if you need a reason to get into it,
it's on ban decisions.
I mean, look at this collection. These people are great Magic minds. Gavin, by the way, also just fantastic person.
Let's start by talking about where Pauper is. Commander Masters added a ton of cards into the format, from Cryptic Serpent to Dread Return to All That Glitters.
Okay, so I like Cryptic Serpent. I didn't even think about, when I was reviewing these cards, I did not even think about how people would just leave black alone and just how they would just go mono blue. All That Glitters, by the way, I thought this would just be a Bogles All-Star, but it actually turned Affinity 2. And Dread Return, come on. The one land spy channel right here, big fan.
To Murmuring Mystic and
I didn't even
more.
I didn't even know this was
of the Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle Earth, formats had a lot of adjusting to do. Where things seem to have shaken out seems to be with 4 top decks. You've got Mono Red, especially still driven by last year's edition of Monastery Swiftspear. Affinity, with the huge pickup of All That Glitters, which you can even strap onto something like a Ginger Brute to end games fast.
Unblockable Ginger Brutes.
Picking and refined from last year. Mini picking up Lorien Revealed as a nice new addition. And Terror, which many players have moved away from the previous blue-black versions of to incorporate Cryptic Serpent and play the full package of 4 Terrors, 4 Serpents, and even Delver of Secrets. Of these 4 decks, no one is clearly on top, and from week to week there's variation in their success.
So this is kind of an interesting statement. Like, I think a lot of people would argue that there are like clear winners, but Gavin's not completely wrong. There is a pretty good back and forth. I even saw a tweet by Alex Ullman, one of the members of the Pauper panel, talking about how Coggates is arguably the best deck in the format. It's just people will play stuff like Burn or Mono Blue because it's relatively simple, fast game plans. Coggates is relatively slow. It can actually do a lot. It can play to its board really well, and Affinity is just a classic favor of mine. I've been playing Affinity ever since starting to play Pauper back in like 2018. The deck is just unkillable. There's always like a rendition of it.
This kind of churn back and forth is great. Just underneath those are plenty of other strong decks. Familiars, Boggles, Ponza, Ultratron, Monarch and Initiative decks, and more. So there are certainly lots of viable options.
What about the combo
decks fighting at the top is pretty reasonable for an eternal format. So on paper, that sounds pretty fine. One thing that just looking at deck diversity doesn't tell you, though, is the speed of the format, something we've been pretty tightly following. The format has dramatically sped up since last year. If you look at the top decks, all of them but Coggate tend to play an extremely fast game.
That's kind of what I was saying.
Any one of these decks being strong can create an arms race where keeping up and attacking past each other, like with All That Glitters, is the way to go. There's even a newer breed of deck that uses Monastery Swiftspear alongside Lotus Petal and Blast Runner.
I've seen this.
Really make
I've seen this. I knew he was going to bring this up. I've seen this kind of lower down on the Pauper metagame page. This version of the deck is like kind of nutty. I played against it like only once, but it's like mono red aggro. It's not exactly burn, but definitely mono red aggro. You're just sacking a bunch of artifacts, Blast Runner. It was a little popular. I think someone put out like a league with it or something, but it was relatively popular. The deck has legs. It does a lot.
Deck that either kills you or fizzles out. Another deck tries to use Balustrade Spy to mill itself into dread returns, and while it hasn't been strong, it can be frustrating to have these decks get good draws and beat you before you can do pretty much anything, even if a deck like that hasn't been consistent enough to be too strong. As a result,
first of all, the shout out to One Land Spy. Come on, let's go. Yo, shout out to Bryant Cook for really like putting it out there into the Pauper world, right? The big legacy combo player and just great Magic player in general. Highly recommend you check out the Epic Storm channel, but yo, shout out to One Land Spy. Let's go, Dread Return.
the format being fast, a lot more of the mid-speed decks have fallen into that second bucket of decks, underneath the top ones. You could argue that if you find ways to give the mid-speed decks more ways to answer the fast ones, or knock out some of the tools from the aggressive decks, that could help change the speed of the format. Now, being a fast format isn't inherently bad, and there are still slower games.
I agree.
For example, Cawgate is at the top and playing a mid-speed or even controlling strategy. But monitoring that speed and if we should do something is something we've been doing a lot of, and
it's important to monitor.
Even if
though,
the format
you
is
add like
theoretically diverse and balanced, if a lot of games don't allow for you to make a lot of decisions because there are too many super fast strategies that don't allow for you to target them all, that can be a problem. If we wanted to change this, would banning one card get the job done?
I don't think so.
Maybe. It's hard to know what ripple effects a single card may have, and if we wanted to change something, it could require hitting several cards, which would dramatically impact the format and people's.
I think this is important to note because you can't just ban like one of the artifact lands. You have to ban all of them. You can't just ban like a one counter spell. Like you can't ban like counter spell to stop the blue decks. You can't really ban spell pierce either. Like that's the thing with Pauper. It's very weird because the commons, a lot of them could technically be problematic, but because they're commons and their abilities are so straightforward, it's hard to come up with like a real ban unless it's like a storm card or something, again, highly problematic in itself. But I think Gavin's right here. You can't really touch
in a way that's quite difficult to predict. Given the format has relatively good diversity, that's certainly a huge risk.
Diversity is key in Pauper.
Would love to hear your thoughts here in the comments below. So one other route we've been talking about again is unbans. Previously, we talked about two cards that we investigated and ultimately decided not to unban: Hymn to Turok and High Tide. You can go hear about why in my video covering them. Like last time, hear about why.
Let's back up a bit. We're definitely going to hear some
Hymn to Turok and High Tide.
Hymn to Turok and High Tide. Okay, so firstly, High Tide, I mean, big combo piece, right? Like Pauper has held back combo decks for a while. There are a surprising amount of things at common that can combo off. We see this obviously from the exorbitant price of stuff like Lotus Petals and, you know, Dark Rituals in the format, Cabal Ritual. Like, look, One Land Spy player, Cycle Storm, you know, learner at this point. There are a lot of things that are busting. High Tide is very interesting. I'd have to do some research on potential High Tide decks. I think there was a format. There was a point where this was unbanned and decks were out there. I just wonder, like, what would High Tide? High Tide would be a good value card at this point. You have a lot of good support cards like Lorien Revealed and Cryptic Serpent. So I'm wondering if there's like value cards or if this is pure combo with High Tide. What would that win condition be? All of the good win conditions are kind of put out of the format. So I'm interested, but Hymn to Turok, personal relationship with, in the sense that a lot of people wanted this out in Modern. I used to jam this when I was playing casual Magic with my buddies, and
you can go hear about why in my video covering them. Like last time,
mono black
this is with the huge caveat that this may not happen.
The mono black decks would, I think,
more, but hearing from you all would be really valuable. At the beginning of last year, the format was in a much different place. Tron had been sitting at the top, along with Affinity, for a very long time. So we axed two of its cards, Bonder's Ornament and Prophetic Prism.
Remember that.
Tron managed to recover all right from these hits.
They're probably going to bring this up, but Prophetic Prism was like one of the best cards ever in Affinity. It came down, it drew a card, and then it fixed your mana. So you could always have like the wrong lands you needed. And this was even at the point where you didn't have the tapped artifacts. You could have the wrong color lands and Prophetic Prism like fix that along with the other eggs. So I don't know if they want to unban these, but unbanning Prophetic Prism
Actually, as the format has sped up, it's gotten harder for a deck that really needs to hit 3 specific lands to compete. So we've been talking about unbanning Prophetic Prism to give these decks a tool back. Unlike Energy Refractor, this helps Tron interact early and better. I don't
think you want Energy Refractor, because Refractor you don't have to tap for this colorless mana, right? So you still have to pay 1, tap this, but you only get a one-time use. This you have to use 2 mana, but you can keep using. So obviously you can imagine that's very valuable once you achieve Tron to produce colored mana. I think Prophetic Prism is better, but I will say that this is better for affinity. This is like, there was a time when cards like Carapace Forger were really good. Carapace Forger being green and 1 for a 2/2 if you have affinity, or sorry, not affinity. What is the mechanic where you have 3 or more artifacts? It becomes a 4/4 essentially. So very, very powerful card at that time. It was kind of like a build your own Mirror Enforcer, and affinity just wanted to go big. It just wanted to stomp over the format, and it did it really, really well just by busting out a lot of cards. Prophetic Prism redrawing you is important.
By giving it access to colored mana to help stop threats.
Giving this just to Tron is
to be
cool,
clear,
but it affects
we don't think this is a major shakeup or anything, but just a slight move to helping Tron compete. The downsides to doing so are that it could once again help out mini color affinity decks, like we saw previously.
Bringing it up.
So
now
in
that all that
Unbanning
glitter is
Prism,
available
this
too,
could accidentally.
There are moments where if the affinity or the all that glitter stack doesn't, there's a lot of exile artifact and shuffle artifact effects in the format right now, and sometimes you actually just don't have access to the colors that you require for all that glitters, or you only have it once, and that's also your blue source, and there's a lot of like kind of min-maxing that you have to do, and giving them access to more colors, more card draw. I mean, it can be dangerous.
Help out one of the already better performing archetypes, Affinity. Additionally, if we eventually do ban cards to slow the format down, it could put Tron in a much better position to recover, which could be dangerous. What do you think about unbanning Prophetic Prism? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below.
It's an interesting unban. As a biased Affinity player, or ex-Affinity player, I would definitely unban it.
Sticker Goblin. The Daybreak and Magic Online teams did some hard work to try and implement this.
So this was really interesting. I encourage everyone watching this video to go look up blank goblin in paper. It wasn't called name sticker. It's not called name sticker in person. It's like a giant underline goblin in paper, and look up what the card says. It works drastically different with stickers out. Like you have to put stickers on this, and you get like mana equal to the number of stickers and everything. It works different. This is more deterministic because of how the implementation of Magic Online works. They couldn't really do the whole sticker thing. So name sticker goblin, especially as a one-line spy player, produces a lot of mana like deterministically, which is really interesting in that sense. So playing this card will always put you up on mana, always, right? So you're going to pay 3, and at a bare minimum, base minimum, you will be getting 4 mana. You will be going 1 up. The majority of the time though, you will be going 2 or 3 up. You'll be getting more than that. So regardless, you're going up. So this is a really interesting card, but the implementation is kind of divisive. A lot of players don't like this because it's
Magic
more
Online, which given stickers don't really work there, was no easy task. Hats off to them. Getting it to mimic how it works in paper.
Oh, here it is. Okay, they have it. So when this creature enters the battlefield, you may put a name sticker on it, add red for each unique vowel on the sticker. Yeah, so you could have up to like 6 vowels, right? So that's how they represent that. They could have up to 6 vowels. The Y is kind of covered by my camera, but again, it's a little different.
Challenging, and the card has been showing up in Pauper some. Because of the differences between real life and online play, it has created a slight split in how the card is used. And while there are going to be differences in online and paper, for example, while Magic Online has most cards, not every card ever is available on Magic Online. This is a notable one. Pauper is also a notable format because the vast majority of play happens on Magic Online as opposed to in person. So we're keeping an eye on.
I think that's one of the that's one of the reasons why it's hard to recommend Pauper for me to people. I really love telling people, if you have access to Pauper decks, teach your friends, your partners, your family, whoever it might be that want to learn Magic through Pauper. Pauper, the interactions are very, I think, relatively simple, straightforward. You're not doing super busted things, although you are. They're just powerful interactions happening at the common level, and they're relatively easy to understand. Like a mono green aggro deck, a blue tempo deck, a affinity deck that costs less for each artifact you play. Like you're trying to understand synergy and everything. So it's easy to teach that way, but there just isn't a lot of paper play. It's very kind of frustrating that way. It's one of the best formats out there. And because it's officially supported by Wizards, I mean, you have Gavin behind it with the Pauper panel. It's really unfortunate to see this.
And if it creates too big of a differential, we're not opposed to taking action on this card. So what does all of this mean for today? Okay. Well, we're not taking any action today. We'll do another check-in before the end of the year on where.
Okay, so I'll tell you what. So they're doing another check-in before the end of the year. So that makes me happy. I was going to say, I don't think Pauper necessarily needs a change. I think the diversity is great. It is relatively frustrating at the top for everything to be super fast. And I say that as like a turbo fog player. So I think regardless of that, I still think it's fine. I think the reasoning in this video makes sense. There are things that could have been banned, maybe a shakeup in the format, maybe an unban, but I think the format is fine. I would like to see an unban though. I think I'm more on the case of unbans in any format of Magic versus banning. I think unbans shake up the format. They bring back older players. They just revitalize the format in a different way than printing.
Where we are with these topics and many others. Thanks all for playing, and please feel free to leave any thoughts below. On behalf of the Pauper format panel, we'll talk with you again soon. And remember, you got this.
Okay, well, I mean, that's the video there. Thanks everyone for watching, and let me know if you want to see more stuff like this, or if you don't want to see any more degenerate react content. But I thought, reacting to this video was, I wanted to do it live, kind of get a first time view of this, but thought it is really cool. Let me know what you think of the potential unbans, a last look at the format, and let me know if you wanted to see any changes in what your unbans would be from the Pauper ban list in the comment section down below. Thanks everyone for hanging out. Till next time.